What I really needed was to recreate myself, which means to bring something new into the world that had never existed before.
What if we could create ecstasy without drugs? How interesting, right?
Yeah.
Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi talks about this in Flow, which is the psychology of optimal experiences. It's a word that's kicked around a lot. And he describes this concept of how to get into flow. It's something you can do deliberately without drugs.
Right.
Did you ever take ecstasy, Steve?
I have not yet. I'm planning on it.
Do you know what ecstasy means? It's a Greek word. It actually means to stand next to something.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that. It was like you're observing it. Not
wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so flow is this state of optimal living that a lot of things happen, but one thing that happens is that time doesn't pass and you're in this zone. I mean, it's been referred to as the zone. And he talks about that because he was a little boy that grew up in the communist belt. I think he's from...
I forget where he's from, but that was actually an interesting part that started off the book for me when he talks about his reasoning to find flow was he noticed some people dealt with the war.
Right.
And they were still happy. And he was like, what is that? And I love those points because would you say he's like the godfather of flow? He's like, he really made it popular.
Oh yeah. He's studied psychology, but he emigrated here. And to escape the communists, he got on a train as people he was saying goodbye to people, most of which they died in the war. But a lot of people are having difficulties dealing with the war, and some dealt with it better. And he believed that a person can make themselves happy or they can make themselves miserable,
right,
regardless of what's actually happening outside, by just changing the contents of their consciousness. And you got to kind of have your antennas up to understand what flow is, because we've all been in flow. If we're little kids, we're in flow when you play. Kids play and time doesn't elapse. They're completely focused. They're like in their own little world.
Right.
That's flow. And when we get around 14 years old, for some reason we stop playing. We become adults and we stop playing and we lose touch with flow. And the world gives us this algorithm to go to school, get good grades, go to good college, do well, get a good job, retire, raise a family, get a mortgage, maybe go on vacation a week or two a year, and then make a lot of money, which is the game that life gives you. The society gives you the game where you're supposed to make a lot of money. But the reality is that may not be where you need to be, because there is a study in the very beginning. He talks about that more money doesn't equate to more happiness. Mm-hmm. Money has doubled and tripled over the last 3 decades, and every single study, that's going up in a straight line. People are making more money, but they're not getting any more happy. Lack of resources and opportunity and things that help you live contribute to unhappiness, but having an abundance of all those things do not contribute to your happiness. What contributes to your happiness is being in a world of flow. So we're going to dive into what flow is and, what it isn't. And a lot of people, struggle with that. This is by the way, he studied, he was talking about how when he was broke one day, he wandered into a seminar. Some guy was talking about Martians and he said about this in his TED Talk. And he said, listen to this guy. He's talking about the psychology of how people are dealing with the war and how some people are doing well and some people aren't. It was the beginning of his journey into psychology. It was Carl Jung. He wandered into a free Carl Jung seminar.
Wow.
The father of psychology. But he also studied Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Viktor Frankl, thinking about when you find meaning in suffering, like in Viktor Frankl's case, like that meaning creates a relief from suffering, but it also gives you an opportunity to do something that you love to do that gives you flow. A lot of people don't like their jobs. Mm-hmm. They literally hate their jobs, and they're not in a flow experience, an optimal experience when they're at work. And they spend most of their lives doing that. So that's the big issue that I wanted to talk about in flow. How'd you like the book?
I loved it. One thing that really stood out to me that I wanted to touch on while you were on it was the pleasure versus enjoyment. And that really stood out because pleasure is instant. It's it's biological. It's to help you survive, and it's like eating pizza or sugar. And the distinction he makes is the enjoyment helps you grow. So even though they're both pleasurable experiences, the enjoyment helps you grow, and that's what flow is all about, and that's what like true happiness is. And people mistake the two a lot.
Right. Yeah. I was reading a piece of Greek mythology, and it was a story. It's called Hercules. I think it was Hercules meets the two goddesses, and he's wandering through the woods, and these two goddesses come up, and one of them's this beautiful goddess who almost looks made up, like she's been airbrushed, like a selfie, and she's almost too good to be true. And she says, "Hey Hercules, my name's Eudaimonia, and if you come with me, life will be easy. There'll be no struggle. It'll be all pleasure, and you won't have to do anything, and everything's going to be great. All right, you got everything you need to be happy and successful." The real name of that goddess was Vice, because it was a fake journey. And the other goddess was not as good looking, but more beautiful, more original, more natural. And she said, "Come with me, Hercules. We're going to work. We're going to have failure. You're going to struggle. You're going to learn. You're going to grow. And you're going to become the happiest you can possibly be." And that goddess's name was Arete.
Wow.
And Arete means self-mastery. And self-mastery comes from challenges. And what flow does very nicely, he outlines in the books, is the axis between the challenge and the skill. Mm-hmm. When you have a challenge that is so low that is not a challenge, it becomes an apathetic experience. And then when you have a challenge that is too hard, that your skill can't cover it, you have anxiety. And when you have a challenge that it's easy and you always win, you have boredom.
Right.
So people are either anxious or bored because they haven't designed a stadium where the challenge is enough that sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you put the effort in every single time. And when you're in those places, that's flow. Think about like playing a game of tennis where you never win.
Yeah.
Or an opponent in a game of tennis that you always beat.
Right.
Neither of those things are any fun. It's always like playing someone that you're always challenged. And I did this in golf. Like some people you could never beat, or you'd always beat them.
Yeah.
And that's what makes golf so awesome, because golf has actually what's called a handicap system.
Right.
So golf gives you a handicap so that when you play someone and they're 6 strokes better than you, you get 6 strokes at the beginning of the match. So you're always matched up well. And when you're in flow and you're playing in a match where somebody is handicapped correctly, so it's a good challenge every single time, that will create what's called flow, and that's autotelic.
That's funny.
Autotelic means self-goal. Like the goal of winning is embedded in the event. Like mountain climbing, for a lot of people, creates flow because it requires a lot of concentration.
Right.
There's tons of feedback, and the skill match a lot of times it's dangerous and a little hard. Of course, unless you're just walking up a hill that you can easily walk up to, but it creates that autotelic experience, that perfect match, which gives you what's called ecstasy. And ecstasy comes from the Greek word that means to stand next to something, like you're observing it.
Right.
Isn't that cool?
Super cool.
That's why a lot of people spend 5 hours, 7 hours playing golf, because of the handicap system, creates a challenge for every single player. Unless they're, I don't know if you ever heard this, some people lie about their handicap in golf. They lie about their scores to literally give themselves an unfair advantage over the player they're playing with.
Right.
I mean, who in the world would play that game?
I don't know. It's interesting that they come up with the handicap rule so that way it almost reintroduces flow. It's like, okay, you guys are different skills. Here's a way we can kind of reintroduce flow into it.
Of course, if they didn't have the handicap system, golf wouldn't be golf.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be some professional golfers that's like playing Major League Baseball. The difference between Major League Baseball and golf is you can play golf until you're 90 years old, 100 years old, and have a handicap. You can get 30 strokes, for example, against Tiger Woods, which means you start in the first hole and you're 30 under par, and Tiger Woods is teeing up 1. Crazy. So you have a 30-point head start, and then as the course goes on and the 18 holes plays out, that match should be even mathematically at the end. So if you play better than you normally play, you'd beat Tiger Woods, unless he plays better than he normally plays. But it's a challenge every single time,
Evens the playing
which
field.
is the sweet spot of flow.
Yeah.
What stories did you like from the book?
I don't know if he had an exact story for this one, but I love he said life goals are irrelevant. So life goals are irrelevant, so it's good to set one. Meaning like they're so big and they're so hard to obtain that it's great to set one. And I feel very strongly about that with my dunking thing because it's something that's so hard to achieve, but it makes me, one, get into flow state all the time, but also it's something I can never, it's like we talk about mastery, it's something I'm constantly working at, and the benefits of working at it include everything from mind to body. So he says, set those giant goals because they help you reach that flow state more often, they help you learn, they help you grow, and that's a great way to live.
Oh yeah, good goal setting is a big part of flow. If you want to get flow in your life, you create a goal that is a challenge for you to achieve, and it's not too hard, so you don't create anxiety or failure, and it's not too easy, so you're not bored with it. Like, I want to make X number of dollars right now, and let's say it's what, and I used to do planning with people all the time. So, what do you want to make this year? And they'd say, oh, I want to make a 4% cost of living adjustment. It's like, you want to live the same year next year that you lived this year over. So you're going to waste 1 year of your life and live it exactly the same as you lived last year. Create a goal for yourself. And money isn't the only reason. It could be the same amount of money with 20 more hours a week off.
Right.
Like, that would be a challenge. How do you make the same amount of money with half the time?
Yeah.
That would be kind of a cool challenge. But the goal's got to fit. The challenge has to be enough so it gets your attention, not too easy so it bores you.
Yep.
Just a simple idea. I like the story about he talked about the Indians in the Shawshoop Nation of the region of Canada, where it was very plentiful. So the elders moved to a spot, and they have to for survival purposes. They move to a spot where there's plenty of food, plenty of water, plenty of resources to make shelters. But they still, every several years, would move the camp to create a new challenge for the people, so they wouldn't get bored. You know, new places to build homes, new places to explore, new places to get fresh food. I think that's an example of flow. You don't want to be in the same pot if you're a plant your whole life.
Right.
You should be repotting yourself. You know, putting yourself in a new world, in a new stadium, with a new game. That's kind of a cool.
Another really cool thing that he mentioned that I haven't heard anywhere else, which was, you know, you lose a sense of time. That's a big part of flow state. It's like time doesn't, but he says what happens is time adapts to you. So whether you're doing something, I've never heard it put that way. I've heard you lose a sense of time, you lose track of time, you could be in the flow state for hours, but it's because time's adapting to you. It's like whatever you need to accomplish this goal, time adapts, and that's a really interesting way to put it.
Well, time is a big thing. A lot of people are killing time, like bored, playing with their phones, or and he puts that on the matrix of low level of challenge, low level of skill, complete apathy. You know, scrolling on Facebook doesn't require any skill. Isn't any challenge. You're just absorbing content and killing time. If you're in a world where you're killing your time, you're not in a flow experience. So the one thing that I learned from Tiny Habits, and I talk about it all the time, is that there's two ways to change anything, to change your behavior. He's a behavioral scientist. Number one is change your environment. So change your environment from an environment where there is no challenge or the challenge is too hard to an environment where the challenge and the skill meet your ability and challenge you to an autotelic experience, somewhere where the goal is embedded. A new job, a new relationship, a new place to live, a new community to make friends and grow in. That's kind of an ultimate way to transform, is to change your actual environment. Secondarily, if you can't do that, do tiny things to change yourself. And that's in Tiny Habits, little things you can change. You know, take up a new sport, learn a new language, meet a new friend.
Yes.
Terminate a bad relationship. Those are all great ways to create momentum, which I think creates flow as well.
Yeah, and like back to what I was saying about the life goals, the reason why they're important, which what you're talking about is, he says the meaning of life is progress, and that's done by continually bordering the line of the known with the unknown, shaping your abilities and improving them over time. So a big part of this book and flow in itself is purely for growth.
Right.
And that's what you were saying, is like when you're terminating a relationship, that's for your own growth. When you're doing these different things, you're always trying to be your better self. And that's what he says, life goals are irrelevant, so set a life goal. And if you have these life goals, you're always getting better because you're trying to achieve such a high goal.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm just going to give you my memory device for flow. It's an acronym, right? It's something that spells a word, and the word is SIMFEST. CIMFEST. And these are the 7 attributes of a flow experience. 7 things that make up a flow experience. Number 1, there's a clear end goal. The outcome and the goal is embedded in the task. That's what's called autotelic. It's Greek for self-goal. Number 2, instant feedback. It's something that gives you instant feedback, like rock climbing. Unfortunately, video games do that quite well. But there's other things in life, like a sporting event. M, it's got to match the skill and the challenge need to be in that sweet spot. Can't be too easy, can't be too hard. It's got to match it. It's got to be a challenge. F requires focus. It requires all your attention. You can't be scrolling or multitasking. It requires all your attention to succeed. And E, it's got to offer transcendence. It's got to offer an ability to escape forward to possibility instead of backwards into pain. And that's a big part of flow, particularly when it's in regard to relieving anxiety. S is you can't be self-conscious about it. It's something you can freely do with your expression without judgment. And T, last, is time. Time goes by like nothing. You don't know where it went, which is ecstasy. It creates an environment like you're almost observing yourself doing it. You enjoy it so much.
It's wild.
Yeah, that's SIMFEST. That's the way to learn about flow. And flow, a lot of people get flow from creativity. Mm-hmm. And I'll just kind of close by saying that some people get flow out of being creative. And we just did that last podcast about the 18 things highly creative people do. Remember? And what are those things? Right? Highly creative people ask big questions of themselves. They ask big questions of the world. Highly creative people spend time alone thinking things. I think to get flow, you need to do some research and some reflection on what it is and do some back testing. What did I enjoy doing? What did I not enjoy doing? In your own job right now, can you make your own world better before you give up on it?
I was going to say, yeah. When you're talking about work and if it's not giving you that sense of flow and you don't know what you enjoy, because I think that what you said was a big one, is that if you find things you enjoy, that's a great indicator you're achieving flow. But if you don't enjoy it, you got to ask yourself, why don't I enjoy it? And for me, like in my last job, it was because I didn't have that bigger purpose. Like even though I was achieving things and making progress, I felt like to do what? Like it wasn't really making me better. It didn't feel like it was making the world better. It just felt like a task, and it wasn't hitting that flow state for me.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now called Life's Big Question, and the big question is, what can I do to the world?
Is that Martin Luther King? What was it?
It's Tom Rath. He wrote Strength Finder. Well, I love it. It's a very short book. It's the next book for our show. But he says people can't be anything they want, but they can be more of who they are.
Love that.
And before you give up on your current life and you say, I need flow, I'm going to quit my job and move to Costa Rica, you don't have to do that. Just look at a world, ask your current employer or the people in your current life, if you're an entrepreneur, like what can we do that puts us in flow more? And Daniel Pink talks about flow, by the way, in Drive 3.0. Like people want intrinsic value to their lives. People want transcendence. People want contribution. There's more to it than money. Money doesn't make you happier. So make yourself better first in your own world. How can you be more of who you are, or make the transformation to who exactly you want to be in your own world? I'll give you a quick example. I have a friend who sells alcohol, liquor, and she's concerned about, maybe she wants to travel someday, and she works for an alcohol brand. I don't drink alcohol, but I said, well, it's an international brand. I said, why don't you approach your employer about going on a 6-month sabbatical and videotaping content all over the world, showing the use of the product? Maybe that'll be a wonderful way to kind of get some flow, and get some new ideas, new creativity, and new experiences. That would be a very interesting way to potentially make it. And she's very happy where she is, but it could be very interesting to somebody. You don't have to be unhappy to try to create flow. Some people don't like their job, but there's another level out there of ecstasy. All right. So thinking about it, making observation, connecting dots is all about flow. Remember this. This is from Howard Gardner's book. Don't ask yourself, how smart am I? Ask yourself, how am I smart? Right? That's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's something that you're really good at, really gifted at. Like the musicians create flow with music. Artists create flow with what they paint and what they build. Architects do it through structure. There's lots of ways to create flow. Entrepreneurs do it through creating products. Learn a world where you can create more flow for yourself. And you'll find that flow will increase your happiness, not money.
Beautiful.
All right. Take care.